All right, hi listeners. Welcome to Election Central. My name is Alfonso Nyena. I'm expecting in studio Cyrus Gray, as well as Michael Rennie, and hopefully Samuel Abu. Um, but why, why I await, or why we all, you and I, await for the others to join in. I will continue playing our theme song while we get ready in the back. But today, basically, the conversation is going to be very, very exciting and animated, but also very important as well. The conversation today has to do with whether or not Liberia risks unrest if the upcoming elections in about 38, 37 days from today are undemocratic. We'll also talk about why low voter turnouts and why low voter registrations in Liberia and how that constitutes or amounts to disenfranchisement of voters and how that can be addressed. Again, my name is Alfonso Nino. I will be joined by Cyrus L. Gray and Michael Rennie and hopefully Samuel Zabo. Uh, Welcome. Share the link. Join, share the link, get more and more people. Get ready to call in and to participate in this conversation on Election Central.
And the spirit of life calling Mamela, and a voice with the fear of a child answered, I am Mamela. Wait, there's no mountain too great. Hear these words and have faith. Oh, have faith. He lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see. Into the waters, into the truth, in your reflection, He lives in you. Free, and a voice in the wind whispers, I am Mamela. Wait, there's no mountain too great. Hear these words and have faith. Oh, He lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see.
All right. Michael, hi, how are you? Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. I see Cyrus in the background, but of course Cyrus is in other way in Liberia, so he might be busy or encountering some challenges. We hope he can pop on to participate in this very important conversation. So today the show will be in two parts. Um, First part is basically the whole idea of just exploring why is it that a low number of people register uh, in our voter registration process and why we have a low number of people also voting in the election process. In the last show, we looked at the statistics, and the statistics show us that really many of our leaders, maybe since the 1985 elections, I should say, all of our leaders except Charles Taylor were elected by a very low percentage, a very low number of eligible voters, way, way, way below 50%. Some people were voted by, voted in, became president just by getting 27%, 25% of the vote, etc. Taylor was the only person I believe who got maybe 50 plus 60%. But yeah, and the plurality of the vote. So why is that so? Why is it that we have a low number of people registering, and why is it that we have a low number of people turning out, and how that impacts our democracy? So that will be the first part of our conversation, and then the second part of our conversation will be if the upcoming elections are unfair or deemed by voters and citizens to be so, whether Liberia will risk chaos and unrest. That would be the second part of our conversation. Again, listeners, we ask you to come and join us, share the link, get your colleagues to come, get ready to participate in the conversation. This is a very, very important conversation that has to do, with the future of our country and our own future as well. So again, Michael, welcome. Cyrus will join us later. One of our panelists, Council of Radio, unfortunately cannot join us today. He's not feeling well. So he called about 45 minutes ago to say he has to go and take care of some legal issues. I mean, health issues, so we wish him well. I'm expecting Samuel Abu, one of the leaders of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas. I hope he's able to join so we can have a healthy conversation. But let's delve, Michael. Let's begin to delve into the first part of the discussion, which is has to do with our democracy. Building a strong democratic culture, participation of people in the electoral process, from voter registration and onwards, and then before we go to the second part. So I basically just did a few, at doc, did some research and just put together a few pieces here. So I want to introduce those before we start our conversation. So free, fair elections are the established way to accomplish governments that reflect the aspirations of the people. So democracy, first of all, is basically government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the way that is manifested, at least one of the primary ways that is manifested, is through the elections process. But if majority of the citizens are not participating in the democratic process, then that democracy doesn't really represent the true will of the people, and it can pose some problems for that society or for that country. As I said earlier, often Liberian governments do not reflect the will of the majority of the people. A sizable number of citizens do not register to vote, and a sizable number of citizens who register do not vote in the elections. We have some data that we'll be looking at later. But before we look at data from previous elections, I wanted us to begin with the recent census numbers. So, according to the recent census, Liberia's population is now 5.2 million, 5.248 million people. The total population increased by 1,772,000, which is 50% increase from the 2008 census. The census is supposed to be done every 10 years. Unfortunately, these census, were not done within that time frame. They were done last year, 2022, instead of when they were scheduled to be conducted. But according to that census, Liberia's population is 5.2 million people. But let's look at the population breakdown, and then let's go to the voter So the population by age, even though the Census Bureau didn't do this breakdown, but I was able to get it from another source, which is within the United Nations system. So population distribution by age it says 15 to 64, ages 15 to 64 constitute 57% of the population. Um, Ages 0 to 14 constitute 40% of the population, and ages 65 and over constitute 3% of the population. So if we do an extrapolation of that figure, we say roughly 55% um, of the population is of voting age, which is 18 years and older. And that will amount to 2,860,000 people who are of voting age. But according to the voter registration data, which we will look at later, uh, a total of 2,498,000 people registered. So basically, 362,000 people who were eligible for the age requirement to register did not register. 362,000. And this is significant based upon the data that we will look at later. Why did they not register? This is simply the counter breakdown. But why did 362,000 people not register? Um, of course, this again, this counter breakdown. There's the total 2 million, little over 2 million people. Um, so let's before we go to voter turnout in the previous elections, Michael. I want us to look at why is it we think that 362,000 citizens who were eligible to register to participate in the election did not register. I have a few theories here. Is it because of the location of polling places? Is it because of the length of time that was allocated to voter registration? Is it a lack of logistics? So what do you think? What do you think? And also, what how do you think that could impact voter? I mean, the building of a democratic culture in the country.
Well, last time we talked about the some of these issues, low voter morale and stuff like that. I think part of the reason that people did not register to vote is the process we have in place. I don't think our process really takes into consideration our culture and our way of life and our people, our education levels, and a lot of stuff. So, uh, if you have a process that require people to be educated, but you don't have pool workers that are educated themselves enough, or at least trained in the process enough to help people who are not educated, it makes it difficult because if you are not educated, you are not able to read the registration requirements, you're not able to sign your own name, and you're trying to get registered to vote, and the person who's supposed to help you register doesn't know the details themselves, they are not motivated, it makes it difficult, you know. And based on past experiences, some of these people don't feel like these candidates are, there for their best interest. So it's low voter morale. They won't show up. It's a waste of their time. It could also be location. It's probably too far for them. There's no means of transportation for them to get to the registration sites.
Mhm.
Uh, and so a lot of things can contribute to this. So at this point in time, I think you know that would be on the NEC to kind of justify or kind of do some research as to what is causing low registration.
Mhm.
I know it's not unique to Liberia. Other countries experience it as well, but we need to take responsibility for our own country and understand why our people are reacting the way they are.
Mhm. Yeah. No,
Cyrus?
I those. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. No, no, I was saying those are really excellent points. People not having the logistics, the location of registration centers around the country, and especially with this voter registration process where they have the BVR system, right, which required electricity require internet connection or whatever the case may be. And so, unlike the previous ones where a registrar could just venture, as you said, into rural places, go far in, it might have been difficult this time around to do that. And I know there were reports in some areas where the laptops or the generators, the solar panels that are provided to people were not working in some places. So if people who went to the registration centers at a certain time and it didn't work, and they have to go on their farms the following day, probably they didn't come back to
Exactly.
register and those kinds of things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then, as you said, of course, education and everything. Cyrus, welcome. I know you're all the way in Liberia. Do you have anything, some kind of breaking news video you want to share with us?
So,
Pastor, am I audible?
yes.
Yeah, how you
Yes,
guys
you're
doing, man?
audible now. A little low, but yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I wanted
audible.
just
Welcome. Welcome, brother.
thank you, man. Thank you both. I wanted to at least haven't gotten here to just join in on this broadcast today, just to test how my equipment will fit
Yeah.
in, whether it came out like the other people. So my intention is to get some real content
Okay.
that I will be sharing with you
Uh,
guys along the week. Um, I'm sitting here at the Cape Hotel in Mama Point. I'm actually outside. It's almost 7 o'clock, but it's still clear. So
mhm,
in a short while, I
mhm.
will go inside where I probably will have a better imagery. But up in Cape Hotel, there is the Atlantic Hotel. I mean Atlantic Ocean, and next
Yeah.
door there
Yeah.
is Mama
Yeah.
Point Hotel on
I
the other
see
side.
the ocean. Beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys carry on. Give me another 10 minutes. I will go inside now. Then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
probably will
No,
be.
I see the ocean. I also hear. Yeah. I see the ocean. I also hear taxi honking. Do they just honk? Why
Yeah.
they keep honking like that?
The jet home for the heck of it. Yeah. It's
All right, man. So
yeah.
yeah, get situated. We're glad to
Yeah.
see
Let
you.
me get
Get
situated. I
situated.
will
We're
join you
here.
guys.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, exactly. So, Mike, as we were saying, really, and this represents this disenfranchisement. The right to vote is a fundamental right, and it's a right that really holds our democracy and our societies together. And if a group of people, just based upon their negligence or refusal to do their job, are depriving people, 360,000 people did not register, uh, who were eligible till did not register. That's a huge number that could sway the election one way or the other. And these are people in their districts who, by their vote, can vote in representatives and
Mhm.
senators who will actually, work in their interests. That's how democracy works, and that's how development goes to local communities. When you deprive these people, especially people in rural areas who really need the development most, of using their power, their voting power, to get in place leaders who will really do the things that they want, that's a travesty against democracy.
That's
And
true.
we, as you said, we need to find a way to address it. I don't know how, maybe, but somebody should be held accountable for that. We should try to improve the systems and processes that try to engage people in the electoral process. It's just wrong. So with all of the other things I wanted to talk about, you mentioned a very key point, which is education. Education of the prospective voters themselves, and education of the people who should be doing the voter registration process. How do you what do you think was lacking? Why is it that they were not even trained, and what we can do to address that? I mean, I have on the screen here, it is a voter education Snapchat. I remember In the 1997 elections, I headed the voter education platform of the Liberia Election Observers Network, which was the first local election observer and voter education entity. It was comprised of various Liberian NGOs, and I was with the Justice and Peace Commission at the time, and I headed the voter education. And we really went. We have radio programs in vernaculars. We have radio programs in Pidgin English. We had, we, in fact, the whole concept of printing a poster size of the ballot paper, the huge poster of the ballot paper, was a product, was something that came from us, clear. And we made IFES, the International Foundation for Election Systems, and NDI, to pay for the printing of the poster that we then took around the country to educate people. So what's lacking in this, and in fact, it was the election in which, interestingly, since 1985, it was that election was the only election in which the winner got a plurality of the votes. So if you educate people, you inform people and show them, they can participate. So what's lacking here, really? Is it that people don't know or they don't care? What is it?
I think it comes down to leadership, because as you said, that particular election you guys implemented was was well done, but the following leadership of the National Election Commission did not build on what you guys had established.
Yeah.
Because after a project or anything is implemented, the implementing team should do an after action review, document what went well and what didn't work, and leave that for future leaders to take and say, okay, this is what happened in the previous election, or previous project, and this is what worked well. This is what didn't work. Why didn't it work well?
Yep.
And then study that and make changes and prepare for the next election or the next project. Just speaking generally, but focusing on election, that is something that NEC should have done. They should have by now. I'm not sure, if they have this or not, but after every election, they should have documented after action review or documenting what went well in the previous election, and taking that information and presenting it for the next election team to implement. And what didn't work, so those guys can learn from those mistakes and make sure they don't implement the same thing the same way. If we were building upon best practices from previous elections, we would have had a smoother process by now. But we're not taking those experiences from previous elections. We're just coming in and thinking that we know the process, or in some cases too, we could probably deal with what we call partisan poll workers, people who are just in it for their party, or just in it for getting paid, which is, to a certain extent fair because people don't have jobs, so you take a job just to get paid to feed your family. You're not as focused and committed, and I'm not trying to question the commitment of the pool workers, but at the end of the day, if you show up to work and the leadership that are supposed to prepare, the program for you guys to get trained well, have all the resources, themselves are not really paying attention to those things, that would trigger down to your morale at work. You would just show up to get paid, and these are all issues that can affect these election results. Disenfranchising 300,000 people, that's major across all counties. And we are a country of 6+ million people, or 5+ million people. That's a major number of people who are qualified to vote or eligible to vote that are not voting. And our old people, our senior citizens that are sitting at home in these villages that need help, someone to guide them. You talked about how they are getting help when they show up to vote. We don't know that. So a lot of things going on that I think it comes down to leadership that needs to make sure that we are establishing processes that work for our people, and processes that are consistent, and we're building upon what was successful from previous elections.
Absolutely. I think you really hit the nail on the head of two of the major reasons. Actually, we're not building upon good practices, and we're just reinventing the wheel all the time. Basically, you look at things, you see what worked the last time, and you build upon it. You see what didn't work, and you eliminate it, or you find the reason why it didn't work, and you improve upon those reasons. It seems that we're just reinventing the wheel every time we do it. I think that's an important point. Another important point is that they're probably not even interested in doing things the right way because they go into these positions, they go into these places with partisan views that skew their decision making and therefore prevent them from looking for best practices and prevent them from doing things the right way, the way things ought to be done. In fact, they go and twist things just to satisfy their partisan, inclinations and those kinds of things. I keep thinking about what it is, or if there's anything that can be done to really hold these people accountable, to really make sure that people who are entrusted with performing these public duties actually perform those duties. I don't know. I think we have to begin as a country and as a people to think about how we really hold these people, how we take power into our own hands and force our leaders or make our leaders to do what they ought to do. The other thing I want to go to, we talk about voter registration. We talk about how 360,000 citizens who were eligible to register did not register. The next thing is to let's look at the numbers of people who actually vote after voter registration, and we do so by looking at what happened in the last election, in 2017 vote. In 2017, it was really, really, really terrible. You can just look at the pie right on the screen. In 2017, President Weah got 596,000 votes, and in the first round, and Bouakai got 446,716 votes. But what's more interesting here is that 541,707 people did not vote in the first round, even though they were registered. They did not vote in that election. That's more than what. That's more than all the votes that Barker got in the first round. That's equal to 41 and 96. That's just 50,000 more votes, 50,000 less votes than we have got. There's just 50,000 less than the votes that we have got in that election. So 541,000 people did not vote in the first round in that election. Um, in the second round, it's probably even worse. In the second round, in the runoff, 993,865 people did not vote. That's more than what we have got. We have got 732,000, and that's more than what Boakai got, 457,000. So the people who didn't vote are close to a million people did not vote in that election. 500,000 voted for a little over 500,000 voted for Weah, and a little less than 500,000 voted for Boakai. So you break it down, 1 million didn't vote. 1 million. That's a huge number. That's a huge number. So I mean, the people who even win these elections and become leaders, can it be said that they have the mandate of the majority of the people?
Well, when you look at the numbers, you can't say that, and I don't know if the election commission is researching why we will register, and just an example, we'll register, 5 million people to vote, but only half of that number show up in polls.
Yep.
And if they're doing the research, are they publishing those findings so that people can look at and say, okay, this is why? Because these political parties will always question the legitimacy of election if we are showing such large variances in the numbers. If you're telling me 2 million people registered to vote, but only 1.2 million people voted, what happened to the other 800,000 people? Did you guys just strike those ballots out so that because they weren't in favor of the candidate that won? Those are legal, legitimate questions they can ask. And that those things will always lead to people questioning our elections. And once people question those elections, the The parties that lose, their supporters will never surrender to whoever win the election, and wrap their hands around that person and say, you know what, hey, we came in, we did what we could, we didn't win the election. Now the election is over. We have a new president. Let's support this guy or woman, to lead our country in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, in as much as opposition parties win elections, we still all in there for the benefit of Liberia as a whole. So we should all be supporting whoever wins the election, put the parties on the side, criticize when you need to criticize if that person is doing something wrong, but support to make sure that our country, is developed. But it will be difficult to support someone who you felt cheated you, and those are some of the things that contribute to people thinking that they were cheated and that elections are not free and fair. If all these variances, all these discrepancies are shown up, it makes it difficult for people to accept these results.
You know what? You make a very important point that I didn't think about before, but I think that's very, very critical. Um, is it even true that 1 million people did not vote, or are you throwing their votes
Yeah.
away? Because yeah, that's an important point I never considered before. Or are you deliberately making it harder for them to vote? Like, what is the issue? But mainly, are you throwing their votes away and saying that they didn't vote? Because we've seen it before. I mean, and I have some historical stuff that we should look at. But if you look at history, 1985 election, there were reports of ballots being dumped in the forest. That didn't favor the incumbent president. Is this what's happening now? And with this huge disparity in terms of people who didn't vote, supposedly, as you said, then those people would never accept the outcome. The losers would be difficult for them to accept the outcome of the election again because of this huge number, but also lack of transparency and lack of effort in the process of making sure that people's voices are actually heard. Yeah, you're right. Democracy is basically, the will of the people and the
Yep.
majority of the people. And if just 25% and 30% of the people are electing the leaders, then the remaining 75, 80%, 60% of the people will remain disgruntled, especially when they believe that the elections, are probably not fair. That's an important point I think we should delve into, maybe at another show because it's really, really important.
Yeah.
And then let me add this. So there's also, and we look at the same data in our last show, but in addition to 360,000 people now registering to vote, in addition to close to in this election, in addition to close to 1 million people now voting, in the last election, there was 4%
Mhm.
of the votes cast were deemed invalid. Invalid. That's what? That's about another 200 or 300,000 people, if not more, whose votes were deemed invalid. What constitutes an invalid vote? Who makes the decision that a vote is invalid? Why is it, even though it's invalid, why is it that the vote was marked wrongly and therefore deemed invalid? What do you think?
Well, you know, I think that comes down to we talked about it last time
Right.
on poor voter education, both from the National Election Commission and from the parties. I talked about the fact that our political parties are not really institutions; they're just one man show.
Yep.
And because true institutions will work towards developing the resources so that every election is a well-run machine. Election is coming up. You have your local candidate, your local representatives that will work towards training and educating people. The election commission will make sure they have sample ballots, for and training materials that they themselves are implementing in the communities, but also giving to the parties that they can educate their voters. You know how they can vote, and also making sure that the voting process is taking into consideration the level of education and sophistication of our people. You cannot ask an uneducated person to come and write down a huge signature or do something complicated on the ballot. So you have to have a process that is simple enough for them to comprehend, to make sure that we minimize the number of invalid votes, because this is a huge percentage. 4% is
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Yeah.
That can mean the difference between an opposition party winning an election.
Yeah.
Especially if they feel like, oh, I don't, this 4%, about 2.5% of it is my people, my party votes, and people who seem to be voting for my party.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate question right there. Even 1%, if 1% belongs to one party, that can be argued as, silencing a party. And so these things are very important, and we know that the incumbent party will have the resources to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
get their people educated or spread the word or have their people at the different polling stations. The opposition parties don't necessarily have the resources historically. Like the money comes from the ruling party; they have access to the capital. Opposition parties, because we are not institutions like we're supposed to be, having members, that can pay dues and raise funds, uh, throughout the years. Because like most people wait till the election year to start raising funds, maybe the year before, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And our parties, people support mostly. There's only a few parties, in my opinion, in Liberia that have supporters who support no matter what. And I think that would be the bigger parties we have.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, most of the candidates that are supported are just supported based on the fact that people like you. Nobody is committed to a party, you know. So, if they're not committed to a party, they will only support a leader that they like. And if there's a different leader in position in that party, a different political leader, they switch their allegiance to someone else, so a different party that they feel more aligned to, you know. So, which speaks to the fact that we don't have institutions. We just liken it to soccer, right? You'll say, "Oh, I like Leo Messi. I don't care about Barcelona when he was there. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Messi fan, so I support Barcelona." When
Yep.
Messi leaves and go to PSG or Inter Miami, as he is now, you support that team and you forget Barcelona. And this is what's happening in politics in Liberia, because we don't have institutions. The Liberty Party, Unity Party, CDC, and all these other political parties, ANC. I think they need to focus on grassroots operations. And that will help them generate solid leadership on the grassroots level. And create, because there will be people on that level that can be career or long-term local representatives that will understand the process enough so that in the future, when future elections come, they're already programmed, they're already trained, they understand the process, and they can help better train your supporters, people to improve and vote. But if every time those people who are there, they switch allegiances, today I'm a pool washer for XYZ party because I like their leader, I will volunteer my time to go, and be a pool washer or elect, local represent local volunteer for the party. And I'm not really trained, and I haven't been doing this for a long time because I'm motivated and excited. I volunteer for XYZ party. Next election, when XYZ party has a different candidate, I don't like that person, I step down. And they got to get a new person who is not as experienced, and that continues. So, but if they focus on building institutions, they will have representatives on the ground that will have years of experience, and it makes it easier to educate their people, even if the election commission is not giving them as much resources.
And that's an excellent point. Our so-called political parties are not institutions; they're built around individuals. They do not overlast, outlive or overlast election periods. They just come on the same when election is over. They are gone, and it's very important. And of course, you touched on their role in educating people to register and educating people to know how to vote. I remember in '97 when through Leon we did that sample ballot as a huge poster size paper that we took around the country. The NPP took really good advantage of it. And of course, Fit also had Taylor, in the middle. But they took that ballot paper and they were teaching their people, and they said, "You come from up 7." He was the 14th. He was the 7th in the list of 14 people. So you come from up 7, you come from down 7. You had the paper, and they use it. And I saw old people, electorate who couldn't, write numbers or couldn't count, going with 7 stones in their hands, and they go to the polling place and say, "I'm here to vote for this number." They just put the 7 rocks down, and
Mhm.
they count the seven, put it down from the top or even from the bottom, and they're able to get get to the
Yeah.
seven and vote for Mr. Taylor. That was a political party taking advantage, but also utilizing or making sure that it was its responsibility to educate its voters and therefore doing it in a good way to get its people to go and vote. I see our people now talking about, you know, number 18 or number two is Barca, 18 is Josh. We have four is Cummings. And I'm wondering whether, and maybe Cyrus will tell us that later, whether the election commission has come up with such a thing, such a ballot, sample ballot that is now being circulated and using it to educate the people to vote. That would be useful. Or did they simply announce, oh, on the ballot you'll be this and that and whatever. And then going back before I bring Cyrus in if he's ready to come in, going back to a political party responsibility, which I think is very critical. I just heard recently that a group of opposition political parties have now come together and said they will, work together to protect the vote, meaning that they will have, monitors who will work collaboratively at polling centers to make sure that things go well at the polling centers. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But the first question that comes to my mind is, you have a month to polling day. You have 1 month of polling day. You're going to start training people? Where would the training take place? In Monrovia? So are you going to train all the people in Monrovia and then send them to the rural areas and local counties where they do not live? Or do you have enough time to go around the country to each county to train people? And most of the most of the irregularities historically that occur in elections in Liberia occur outside Monrovia in the rural areas where you don't have a lot of eyes on people. So are they just so you're training people to man the polls 1 month to election, and B, you're probably just going to train them in Monrovia. How they going to be able, and you send them, so you take somebody from Monrovia, from Nuku Town, and send him to River G County to go and monitor vote somewhere in the bush where he can't even get to or whatever. What's going to happen there? So again, response taking responsibility, as you really emphasized, is really, really important. And I think because our political parties, a lot of them are not institutions, it's difficult for them to do that. And I think that is an important point, and I hope they're listening and paying attention to these things. Cyrus, if you want to come in, have you seen or heard of a sample ballot paper? Have you heard anything on the radio in vernaculars or pidgin English, etc.?
Let me say something quick before Cyrus is coming. Just I think another thing to take into
Yeah,
consideration is that the photos that are being used by these candidates, you know, I think it would be wise of them to, from the very beginning of their campaign, have an image that they know they will submit to the election commission that fits the requirements, and use that image in
absolutely.
all their promotion to have some level of consistency in the views of people. So when they go to the ballot, they know that this is the picture that I should be looking for. But if you start changing it and start using different images on flyers and brochures and promoting and campaign materials, people come to the ballots confused. Especially if they don't know your
Mhm.
candidate personally, they haven't seen that candidate over the years, they come to the ballot confused. So I think it'll be great. I know it might be too late for some of these parties, but those are things to consider. The picture you start using from the beginning of the campaign, keep that as the picture that you will submit to, and keep that consistent so your voters can know who they're voting for, easily recognize.
That is an important point. That creates familiarity, so people know when they see that hat on your head, they know
Mhm.
is Michael. This is the hat I've been seeing, and those kinds of things. But you're right. If they just changing, even the post, the campaign material, the printing,
No
if they
feeling.
just changing the picture on it every
Sorry,
day,
loud enough.
it can it,
Small.
it can be a problem. It can be a problem. Totally agree. Um, Let me add this to the site. Um, I don't know if Sarah is hearing us.
Yes, I hear you, Alfonso. Can you guys hear me?
I don't think.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we hear you well now. So, uh,
Yep. Go ahead.
yeah. So the question I was asking was, seen any? Have you seen or heard of any major voter education process going on in the country?
So I've been here for a couple of days now. The direct answer to that question is no. If you're asking whether there are sample ballots and education on those ballots going on, the answer is no. Generally, there is also a slow pace of the campaigning. I think most people attribute it to the lack of money. What you see around mostly are posters of contestants in every category stuck on every wall, where you will be passing light poles and stuff like that. You Just late last week, you had the chair of the elections commission sounded
Hmm.
out a warning that she suspects that there will be significantly high numbers of invalid votes in next month's election. And for reason for that, I mean, if you think about last year, the last time we talked about this, we said the number was 4%, but actually it was 5.39%
It's
in the first round.
5.39. Yeah.
Yeah, 88,574 votes that were cast in 2017 were declared invalid. Right now, one of the things that is common is that partisans, their supporters going around and they're tearing down other people's uh, posters. So I think that her warning, and she stated that her warning is, she seemed to be saying that with that kind of aggression, when people go in the ballot box, instead of the ballot booth, instead of they mark their candidate, they may not resist the temptation to draw some line on the other people candidate or the vestation or pop their eye or something, and those
Hmm.
votes will be declared valid. But what I noticed already around, there are dozens of vehicles marked with European elections observers, UN elections observers. So you have a lot of people in town, ECOWAS and all that, but the actual contestants and their activities, voters' education, the radio, other than talk show, that doesn't seem to be a big effort towards explaining to people what the ballots will look like and how they should vote. And that is a fear considering the history of voting we've had here, where a lot of people either uh, deface the ballot or don't turn out to vote at all. Yeah, there's not a major momentum here, even amongst most of the candidates, at least yet. And we
Hmm.
are going to very soon be 1 month from the election.
Yeah. Currently, what, 37, 38, 37 days to the election, and it's
Yeah,
it's uh,
right about
it's
today,
shocking.
today's the third. Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, 37 days
So
to the
it's
elections.
really shocking to look. Yeah.
And also, there doesn't seem to be a
Oh
clear
boy.
forerunner. One thing that seems to be common is that most people, especially in the urban areas, are almost vehemently expressing their disapproval for the re-election of President Weah. So you see, he went to Bombing Hills, and the people booed him there. Some strange things happen there, though. He goes there and he lifts the name of the Senator Situma as his preferred senator for the region, and the people started to boo. No, 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 we don't want that man. And he said, "Well, if you don't want him, man, I want him. I will vote for him." So even the
Oh.
president himself needs voters' education because the president does not get to vote for a senator of Bonny County when he's a resident of Muswell. They say I'll vote for him.
He will go.
Similar thing happened in Cape
He
Mount.
will
He
go
goes to
there.
the mining town there, in Joy, and the people were just yelling, "You have lied to us." Because there were cases where the P Mountain group discovered the gold vein under a village there, and they evacuated the village on the terms that it would build a place for them, and that has not been done, at least to the degree that the people had hoped. So the people were just booing and say he's a liar, failed promises. Same thing in Mangibi. There was an earlier visit of that team to Bassa County and nobody showed up.
Yeah.
So I mean, the whole election summit is almost like a laissez-faire. There are no intention. You don't see the intentionalness of the parties beyond people sticking their posters all around. I imagine that the printing presses are probably making some money right now. But I mean, along the week, I'm going to be here for a little bit, so I'm going to be getting much more deeper and taking the camera along. So as we meet along the week, I will have more, more content for you guys that you can discuss and with real time information. And also try to bring some of the stakeholders on in interviews so we can have
Mhm.
discussions with them.
Mhm.
Thank you.
No, no, I think the information that you just provided is very, very significant. You're on the ground. I mean, that's information that a lot of people do not have, that we don't have here. So it's really, really extremely important, that you're filling us in. And we look forward to more of that, really more of that information. Maybe at some point talking to, election commission people and seeing what's really going on, like what's the voter education that they're doing. I mean, it's scary that the chairperson of the election commission is predicting that there will be a high number of invalid votes in this election. And it's scary on several grounds. One, by her idea, her reasoning a little bit, that, people are aggressive towards, candidates, and therefore they might rip ballots and all of that. But there's also another factor that's really, frightening to me. People already don't have a lot of confidence in the election commission in the process. And the chairperson of the election commission comes here and predicts that there will be a high number of invalid votes. If the invalid votes actually turn out to be high, people will say, "Oh, it was intentional. It was planned. She said it was going to happen." So I think rather than educating the people about how to vote, to say do not deface the ballot, don't put a cross mark against the opponent, just mark a check mark or a thumbprint or whatever. She said because you are aggressive and ripping, posters from light posts that somehow there'll be invalid votes because that would be carried over into the booth, which is, I mean, the line there is not a straight line. I mean, help me out here. But before we continue, I want to welcome Mr. Samir Abu. Mr. Samir Abu is one of our discussants today. Abu is a longtime journalist. He's one of the leaders here in the United States of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas. Abu worked with radio, well, ELCM and Radio Veritas in Liberia. So welcome to the conversation, Mr. Abu. Do we?
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
you're audible. You're audible. So you
Okay.
followed the conversation a little bit. We're talking about voter registration. We're talking about voter education, low voter turnout, low voter registration. Just looking at the numbers and doing extrapolation, we can say that close to 360,000 people who are eligible to register to vote did not register. And then, of course, we look at previous numbers to say that close to 1 million people did not vote in the last 2017 elections. And 5.39% of the votes cast were declared invalid votes. And now, as Cyrus just updated us, the chairperson of the National Elections Commission is predicting there will be a higher number of invalid votes in these elections. And Sarah's also saying it's kind of a laissez-faire situation. Not much education is going on besides people just printing posters and putting them on lipo around the country. No real voter education on radio in the various dialects, in street theater and those kinds of things going on. Can weigh in on that.
Thank you so much. I really been listening to Cyrus. How are you? It's been a long time. Cyrus, are you
Yeah, how,
muted?
how, are, how are you, Sam? Good seeing you after a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I tell you what,
Okay.
it does it appear that my reception is at least average? Is it good? Unlike, or if I
Yeah, I
keep
can
from
hear. I
Liberia, I
can.
wanted
I
to
can
make
hear.
sure.
I can hear you, but sometimes
No,
there is a delay.
your reception is strikingly good.
Yeah,
It's
but
strikingly
sometimes there
good.
is
I
a
didn't expect
delay.
it to be this good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now
Oh,
that
okay.
Cyrus, you are on the ground. Brother Richard, how are you? Well, I want to say hi to my viewers out there, but actually, this program is quite timely, and all of the panelists here are very, very much occurring with the situation on the ground based on current research and available resources, and at the same time, knowledge of what has happened in the past. Uh, the concerns are very great to the point that people have already started telegraphing that there may be some rigging going somewhere. And as they have always said, rigging of elections do not take place on polling day. They take place during the process going towards polling. Let's say, for example, as Cyrus has said earlier, during the voter registration, the we remember some time ago the elections commission said, oh, there were underage voters. There were people who were not eligible to vote, and they registered them. And today she's also saying that there are so many thousands of people who were eligible to vote but did not vote. And who can we hold responsible for that? One, those who are interested in voting. I mean, for people to vote for them, those are the contestants. And at the same time, elections commission, because elections commission cannot sit there and tell us where it is their business whether they want to vote or not. We just there to conduct the process. It is also their responsibility, their constitutional responsibility, to ensure that they do a lot and a lot of public education for people to know why it is good for them to vote, so that they can get excited to go to vote. Okay. Now, if she's saying that there may be a lot of invalid votes, it means that that particular aspect of the election commission's responsibility of educating the voters on why, when, and how to vote, I think they are lagging in that. That I'm easily convinced if she can come up with that. And those are some of the issues that will bring about what we call rigging or fraud in the elections. They are looking at the elections, but more or less they are not looking at some technical aspects. I'm looking at a population who believe that all of this time, the election commission is doing well. Some parties are doing well and other things. Where do we have the election commission really monitoring the electoral process? Or they have just gone back to do their thing and allowing the political parties to do what they're supposed to do? I really believe that the government of Liberia, even though the government is now a player or is a player in the electoral process, at the same time, they are like presenting themselves as referees for the entire process. So, what we need to do is that the political parties also have to get involved in helping the voters understand how to mark the ballots. This process of saying we will protect our votes. We will protect our votes. Yeah, that's a very good thing. But if we want to avoid confusion at the polling centers, we will have to, because the election commission already said they foresee that there will be a lot of invalid votes. Invalid votes come from several factors. Either you did not mark the ballot well, or you did not follow instructions. That is, they told you to put a check mark and you decided to put a cross. They told you to mark in a specific location and you decide to mark in another location. These are all the things that can bring about valid votes. Now, protecting our votes would mean that even though you have a poll watcher, the poll watcher may want to may look at a particular ballot and tell you, well, this ballot is valid. But the elections commission or whoever the election worker there may say, no, this is not valid. Then it becomes an argument between the election workers and the poll watchers. So we have to look forward to see how we can avoid these kind of confusions that will come in at the polling centers, especially at places that are very remote where we have no electricity, especially where we'll be counting the ballots in the darkness. And I watched the election. I was monitoring the election in Sierra Leone. What they did there was that, based on the number of the high level of illiterate people in the country, and knowing very well that the indelible ink that they use for election, most of the time, it doesn't dry immediately. So they try to teach the voters a particular way that you can fold the ballot so that it cannot run from one person to another person. Because if they bring in an ink that doesn't dry off and someone goes and place their hand or try to thumbprint on Alfonso's square and just take it immediately and fold it, you find out if it is not folded in either a longitudinal direction or a vertical direction, you find out that that particular ink goes into another person's portion. So that means that you did duplicate voting. You voted for two persons. And that means that there is going to be this double voting. And this means that this particular ballot will be considered it will be considered an invalid vote. So we call on the Elections Commission to ensure that they are going to bring valid ink that dries up immediately or dries up after a few seconds. And even if we are taking our own ballpoint pens to the voting places to make sure that these pens, after you have marked the ballot, it dries off immediately. Because when they are saying this, it means that they are not going for quality ink. They may be going for an ink that may not dry very easily. So that's one issue that I'm considering that may lead to a very high number of invalid votes. So there is something the Election Commission is not telling us well. Yeah, let's continue. I will come back.
That's really important. Okay. No, that's really important because in our last conversation we had here somebody, a former employee of the Election Commission, and he went in our conversation about invalid votes. He specifically talked about the ink situation, how people will, use the thumbprint or whatever, and then afterwards, basically the ink wouldn't dry and they fold the paper, and then it goes on the other person's photo. So then it shows like you voted for two people, and so that vote is declared invalid. So that is really, really an important point that you make right there. I think another important point that you've made that is really critical, and I hope people take into consideration, is that it's important to protect the vote when the vote's cast. But if your people do not know how to vote, how to mark the ballot, the right way to mark the ballot, the right way to fold the ballot paper, then the vote you're trying to protect will not vote will be in vain. So the best way to protect the vote is to make sure, well, one of the best ways to protect the vote is to make sure that the vote is cast accurately and according to requirements. So basically, there are a few things that you all have talked about here. We talk about the importance of people knowing how to vote, the different methods of educating people on how to vote. Cyrus updated us that a lot of that is not going on. Much of what's going on in Liberia basically is just people printing posters and posting them on on boards, which I think is crazy because how many people really are just standing and looking at posters and reading to see why that's important? That might not really be the thing that you need to do. What you need to do is to, let me see here, is to educate people in terms of how to vote. Yeah, there's buffer in here, so and where to vote. And so we will outline a number of things that I think are really critical. Again, I hope the stakeholders are taking them into consideration. I hope the election commission and the political parties are taking them into consideration. For example, how are people supposed to mark the vote to express their intent? Is it by check mark, or can they also use thumbprint if they can't use the check mark? Can someone mark somebody's ballot? Like Michael talked about, people who, the old people in the interior, some people, are visually impaired, etc. Can they be assisted, and who can assist them? And does somebody have to watch to make sure that the person who's assisting is marking it right, or the person who's assisting has to be somebody who's close to that person? I think all of those things need to be spelled out. Of course, what are the ink dries instantly? If the ink doesn't dry instantly, are they telling the people that wait until the ink dry, wait for 5 seconds, 10 seconds before you fold your ballot paper, for example, or are they getting ink that dries instantly? These are things that I think people should be paying attention to. How do they people who can read? How do they identify the candidates on the ballot paper? The ballot might not be as clear, or the positioning of the candidates, etc. Then, of course, we talk about radio programs in the local vernaculars and in pidgin English, TV, visual demonstrations. Is TV in the country now? So are people demonstrating? You cast a ballot this way, you fold it this way, and you wait, and then you fold it and put it in the ballot paper, put it there before you leave. Those things can be demonstrated on television for people to see. Sample ballot, we talked about earlier. We talked about community street theater. I know in the 97 election, Itis Theater and a lot of groups were doing community street theaters, basically educating people on how to vote. And their theaters were also appearing on radio, etc. It's striking
But
that
again,
Cyrus.
Alfonso, in case they give these contracts to people who are already regime collaborators,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
we have seen that
And
from
it's
in the
striking that
past.
Cyrus. Yeah, and it's
Let's see, for
striking that
example,
Cyrus is saying those things are not being happening.
Judy
Yeah.
Andy remains the only group that they continue to give the contract to, and she takes a big contract and give it to those who she wants to give it to. And it's most of the time very
Mhm,
glaring that she is a collaborator of whatever regime that is there.
mhm. Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, hopefully, if she gets a contract, her information will be, people will look at it, political parties will look at it and see the information she's putting out there, to see. And also, I hope that, the process of contracts goes through an open bidding process as well, as it should be. And if it's not going through that process, and if civil society organizations and political parties think that, something is it's not going right, I hope they can also, take action or speak out or go to court, etc. Um, so I want us we this program, as we said from the beginning, is divided into two segments. It's actually a 2-hour program, 2:30 to 4:30. So we already we'll have about 45 minutes to go, if I'm calculating right. I wanted us to kind of, you know, conclude on this piece about voter education, voter registration, the way forward, and the role of civil society organizations, central government, political parties, etc. But I also want us to then, prepare to go to the next part, which is very critical based upon all of the things we've been hearing from Monrovia, all of the things we've been seeing, where people are attacking each other. Somebody has already died in the process. So Michael, let's kind of let's wrap this part of the program up. That has to do with voter registration, voting pattern, vote and teaching people how to vote, voter education, etc. And some pointers to the stakeholders to see what needs to be done to make sure that this process is it's actually an expression of the will of the people.
Well, I'm listening to that statement from the chairperson of the election commission that the election commission expect a high number of valid votes. I'm wondering if she was able to articulate why she anticipated that. That's important. Because that should that if you say you expect a high number of invalid votes and you're not saying why, then who's responsible for that? Are you blaming the voters? Or are you blaming your organization? And if you blame your organization, are you saying you didn't have enough funding or you didn't prepare well, which is it? So there's a lot of things to take into consideration there. I went on the election commission website, and we don't have a website for the 2023 election. All the information for 2023 election is on the National Election Commission website, which is a bad technical strategy because then that website is oversaturated with information. You don't know where to find information. There should be, for every election and every midterm election, we should be creating, new election portals that have information specific to that election. You can't even find copies of the ballot box. I mean, maybe it's there, but to find that information is difficult. So if the political parties wanted to go and find information and resources to train their people, where are they going to find that? And so I think a lot of this, as much as the political parties have their burden to take, a lot of this goes back to the election commission for being ill-equipped, not prepared, possibly not capable or qualified to handle the election in Liberia. Earlier in the show, we talked about the voter registration process. People go in the villages that we don't have enough electricity to power the laptops, internet connectivity. We are nowadays technology nowadays is very, very versatile, right? There are ways to work on those things. There are ways to create applications that upload automatically once it has internet connection. So it doesn't stop you from using technology to get people registered, but that information is stored in your computer. And as soon as you have some kind of Wi-Fi or internet access, it automatically uploads to the central database. There's so many ways to kind of go around those things. So for election commission to say we don't have, our laptops are not working, we don't have power. So how did you guys prepare and plan to send your workers out there to go register people? Didn't you have to prepare for these kind of situations when you develop your solution to register people, where you're not taking these things into consideration and building up, and implement and putting in backup plans to make sure that, if electricity goes out, the software we have will still function. It will still function, and we still will be able to get, data up to the cloud to wherever we're storing our election data, and our registration paper. What has happened in the past that our people, that those invalid ballots we had, why were they invalid, and how can we prevent that? And after an election, sit with the political parties and get their feedback on what they think you did wrong. And as an election commission, take that information, go back and review it, and put that in an after action review process, documenting your good practices and bad practices, so that the next group of people who run the next midterm election or main election, can take that as a learning material and make sure they don't make the same mistakes. So that when the oversight body at the legislature reviews it and say, but in 1987 election, the election commission then documented that this and this and this was a bad practice, and this is why. Why are you guys still implementing that when you have something telling you that it is not good? So they will have a measuring stick to hold them accountable for. But right now, we don't have any of those. Everybody's just, like you said, reinventing the wheel, coming and doing whatever they want. And because of that, we will never have a really solid election commission. We won't have an institution. We will just have people coming, getting paid, and going. And that will be my closing statement on that particular section of the show.
No, that's a very important point. Mr. Abu?
Yeah, we'll still go back to the voter registration. Just as Michael has said earlier, many people were deprived of voting, of registering to vote, and no extra time was given. So the Election Commission had admitted their fault by stating the number up that there is a very high number of people who are at voting age and did not vote. Now we're here today. This is my first time since I followed elections from 1985. This is my first time people taking a very big interest in the people they are calling first-time voters until it has become a national body. They call them national first-time voters. This is the first time it's coming on in Liberia. So it means that there is something that people really know that they want to do. There is something sinister in what they want to do. So looking at the population out there, from people we talk to on all levels, we find out that a lot of people do not have confidence in the Elections Commission and the current, not the process, because the process has activities and all of these activities will go on. But are they going on legitimately, or are they going on based on best practice? No. A lot of people did not vote. Why people who were at the age of 18 were not voting? They were not registering. There were people who were less than 15, who were less than 18, that were coming to register. Of course, the Election Commission told us they booked some. We've heard issues that people are taking, they are taking, how to call it, the election ID cards, the voter ID cards from people. Either they're buying them off to deprive them of voting, or to use other people to go to vote in their stead for the party that they want to vote for. So mining the ballots or protecting the ballots is a very important issue in this whole process. But at the same time, before you reach to that stage, other processes that go through will have to be protected. If you did not catch anything during the registration time, during the polling time, you may not catch it. And at the time you want to catch it, polling time, it comes out with a very big confusion. Then we do not have a good electoral process. People will be declared winners without the process being completely, adjudged, or without the process being monitored well. Somebody is declared a winner. And then we come to the Liberian thing, that thing is over, and we can't do anything about it. Liberians are afraid of war. Liberians are afraid of argument. Then let it stay. But letting it stay is another dime. It's another 6 years that people are staying. So we have to do everything to protect this electoral process. The Elections Commission will have to come to itself and see what they are doing. We are not going to allow them to be working overnight and act like we have not gotten the money for this, but we need people to be educated on the electoral process, not only the polling, because any mistake that is done on polling day, it means the entire process may go into jeopardy. We want even the Elections Commission, not only the Election Commission, actually, the political parties must be fully involved. We want the sample ballots to come way out in advance, maybe almost about within the next 2 weeks. We want to see the sample ballots so that the Election Commission, or even the political parties, will have to use radio jingles, vernaculars to go into the villages to get themselves involved in actually teaching the people how to cast their ballots. Because if you do not teach the people how to cast their ballot, they may stand on the line from 4 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock, and they end up casting ballot the wrong way, and their ballots are not considered as valid ballots. The Election Commission has already told us that there will be a lot of invalid votes. So we have to be very careful. Now that we've heard that news, we have to start working towards it to ensure that it doesn't happen, or we try to bring that number to the barest minimum.
I'm sorry,
points,
I have to say this. I don't understand. In fact, I heard Mr. Abu saying that the voter ID card thing, and it puzzles me. Why do we have voter ID cards? Why are we wasting thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a voter ID card platform when we're supposed to have a national ID card platform that was supposed to be implemented not too long ago? So where are those IDs? And I'm not saying voter ID card is a bad thing. I'm just saying for a poor country that has no money, that needs aid, why do we keep throwing money down the drain when we can, and our different institutions keep operating in silos and doing their own thing and not working with other institutions to use the information they already have? Because if you have a national ID card system, a platform that everybody has, and you make sure that students that are getting into that age range that will be in the next election, they will be qualified or eligible to vote, make sure they get their national ID card. So when the time comes, all they have to do to go and register to vote is show up with their national ID cards. Now information is entered, is registered. The day it's time to vote, they walk in with their national ID card again. They show that, you verify that, and they go and vote. You save money on having voter registration card, for thousands of dollars that can be implemented or used to put into something else. That the whole process is like training. But if you have to go spend, if you have a 10 million national election budget and you have to spend 1.5 million of that on ID cards, and of course you're going to do it again the following election, it is a waste of money that we don't have. And it just seems to me why we keep making things hard for ourselves as a country. Just puzzling.
Yep. Very, very puzzling. And that goes to the point you made earlier that we're not even like looking at best practices and trying to copy and improve upon them. I mean, why are we duplicating IDs? Why does somebody have to have a voter ID card and then a national ID card? And then Abu, you make an important point: the issue of Western voters versus the election commission telling there will be a lot of invalid votes. Go ahead.
No, not that. You see, in Liberia, people just love to have identification cards. Imagine somebody goes to school, they got a school ID card, they are a member of a church, they also have the church ID card, the member of a social ID card. They just take ID cards and waste it on themselves just to put money in people's pocket when you can use. Here in the great United States, my driver's license is my ID card because the data there gives every information about me. But then when you go to the ministry,
I think Mr. Abu is frozen.
Yeah. Cyrus, are you there?
Are you hearing me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, we're hearing you now, Abu. So we want to, because Cyrus is using a lot of bandwidth and a lot of money to pay for that thing. We want him to come in. Are you paying $50 a day for internet service?
No, not nearly that. I have what I did. I went to the telecommunication company, asked for a modem, and they gave me a portable modem, and I have a monthly data on it, so it's good. I mean, I used to watch my cable channels and all that, and that's why I'm able to call it.
And how much is that?
Wonderful.
Well, the modem is I think it's $65, and then you can choose what you want to pay for a plan, anywhere from $9 to $100
a month.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And
that's almost equivalent to what we pay here for Comcast and other places.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, what a couple of things I'm here to do. I want to make sure that I can use the phone to call. Yeah, go ahead, Franco.
So we were trying to wrap up. Now we're saying we're trying to wrap up on this whole voter registration, voter education piece before we go to the next segment, which is whether we risk give me all the tension in the country, whether we risk unrest. But we want to give you an opportunity to talk about the voter registration, voter education, election integrity, and transparency piece.
Well, we passed the voter registration component, so we have a figure of registered
Mhm.
voters now that we're working with. My own concern is the voters' education. Like all of you have said, one of the things I noticed here, you have a lot of radio stations in Liberia, all over the country. So you would think by now they will have jingles in the vernacular, uh, as the Elections Commission talking about the processes, the timetable, the necessity and the importance of voting, and also from the party side. Yeah, earlier I heard somebody mention the parties signed a MOU that they will work together to protect the vote. What does that mean, really? What does that mean? Because there is a perception here in many places that this whole exercise is just about preventing the current president from winning elections. Frankly, that is not enough. So you have 19 separate contestants. Are these contestants making a case to the Liberian people on what makes them suitable to govern beyond the fact that we just want the other people to go? So if we're not careful at the end of this exercise, we might just have the same set of people in different uh, uh, configuration in charge, and the challenges in the country will not go away.
Different clock,
Uh,
different governments. Yeah.
yeah, one of the things that is noticeable easily is we are too slow in doing the heavy work. And Abu mentioned that. But now you should have sample ballots. If you already know that knowledge about the ballot and how it's handled is necessary, so that uh, people, I hear people saying, okay, we need to monitor the elections, make sure that our vote is not is accounted for. Do they realize that there are going to be 5,890 polling places all over the country? Other than just saying protect our vote, what is being done to ensure that there are poll watchers in these areas? This is also the rainy season. Imagine in a country where more than 60% of it is unpaved. So talking about education, talking about even logistics, the education part will be assuming that people will be there poll watching, that they should be educated. But I think there will be a challenge even getting people there. And getting people there, not necessarily that you have to move people from one locale to another, but even in those remote areas, is there a program, a mechanism in place by the stakeholders to even select people in those areas where they live and educate them on what poll watchers are supposed to be doing and reporting? So that there's still, it appears there's still a lot that has not been done or considered. And the time is not on our side.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really not sure if those things will be done or if they will even be done accurately. To be honest, again, they have about 37, 38 days to go. I mean, when would they start cutting and running jingles around the country and educating voters and poll watchers and everybody about the process? I think they've lost significant time that cannot be made up for. Really, if they want to do all of those things, they might not be able to do them. And then, as you were talking about, I mentioned earlier, I saw this MOU from a number of political parties, Unity Party, Liberty Party, and a number of other parties, I believe, CPB, all saying that they're going to work together to protect the vote. How are you even going to do that and place people at polling places? You talk about that's 5,090 polling places. Are you going to go to these counties to train these people given the road condition? Can you do that within a month and place people? Are you going to train people in Monrovia and take them there to monitor the vote? if I'm living in Monrovia and the Oro and you train me and send me into Lofa, um, I don't even know what the transportation situation is in Lofa, uh, from where I would be staying to get to the polling place. I might get there late. I might not know the terrain. It's a lost cause. I don't think
Another
they'll be able to do it.
also another element of that is that you will be
Yeah.
already disenfranchised because the
Yes.
Supreme Court in the last election have made it
Yep.
clear that nobody should be allowed to vote to a place where they did not register. So if you're taking
Mhm.
a Joe from here who registered somewhere else and sending him to Foya to go and be a vote watcher, you just reduce yourself by one vote. Are they even aware of that or
Exactly.
considering it?
And yeah, yeah. Well, 5,890 polling places. If each party decides to put, one person to each polling place to this and take the person from another location to there, they will be disenfranchising themselves
And
by that
and, and,
number.
and,
That's
and
even
that is
crazy.
intelligent. That is an intelligent way of voter tracking. You know, you're moving the
Yeah.
people from the
Um.
places that are supposed to vote
I,
to other places.
yeah. I want us to move to the next point because there's a lot of concern about this. I know that there've been recent incidents. I also know that a few months ago, the political parties themselves, with the help of ECOWAS, I believe, signed the Farmington Declaration or whatever agreement, whatever it is, to make sure that the elections are peaceful. Recently, a group of Liberian women also form an organization. I saw a video where President Sirleaf was launching their program against violence in the election, and then we've also seen incidents of violence in the election. Somebody actually got killed, according to reports in Nimba County, already due to election violence. And we have a history of election violence, by the way. So the photo on the screen there is actually somebody who died, was killed in 2011, when CDC partisans who were upset with the outcome of the election clashed with UN peacekeepers and police officers. And this person, this individual, this gentleman, young man, was a CDC partisan who was killed in that process. So there's that history of election violence, and of course, I talk about the incident in Nimba County where there was a clash between partisans of I believe Unity Party or supporters of Brent Johnson and those of another group. And this young man reports out that this is the young man who got killed in Nimba County. So the election violence already has one casualty. Um, and that's pretty concerning. And with 37 days away from the election, voting, tensions are rising. Somebody has already died. This is photos of the violence between CDC supporters and Unity Party supporters a few weeks ago when they clashed in Monrovia again because they met in the same location. I think it was the day that the Unity Party was going to name its campaign team, and CDC partisans are also gathered in the same area, and they clashed, and these people got injured in the process. So there's a lot of drumbeat. There's a lot of incidents in violence, and there's a lot of drumbeat, and there's a lot of worry. So I think it's important for us to have this conversation, for us to preempt anything that might happen, and educate people and make sure people who are planning to do anything nefarious might think twice. But also get people to know that that really the peace of the country could be threatened if these acts continue. So the big question on the minds of people, the big concern on the minds of people, gentlemen, is: does Liberia risk its peace being undermined? Do we risk chaos? And pray to God not, but a return to full scale violence if these elections are not free, fair, or neutral. not seen, not perceived by the people to be so.
I think we risk I think we do risk going back uh, to our, you know, crazy Civil War days, or or the Second Civil War, if the election continues to show a lot of violence between the different partisans, and then candidates in the election are feel disenfranchised or they feel cheated, and their voice is not being heard. You know, this leads to it may not start right away. It may not be something that a candidate goes, and start in trouble. But guess what? It could plant the seed. So that the next election, people start preparing like, oh, if this happens again, you know, and I'm not satisfied, my questions are not answered or concerns are not, met, I will go and do this and this, and they start preparing, and next thing you look, we're back into people fighting, in communities, or people going and get rebel groups to start doing crazy stuff. So it is very important, and then also the well-being of our people. It is not okay for anybody to be hurt, let alone killed, for supporting a political party, no matter what the perception of that party is. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. They're entitled to support who they want, And in the police, the security forces in Liberia should protect every Liberian from any brutal experiences or harm that can affect them if they go out there to say, I support this candidate. Nobody should attack them. And I know partisans will get crazy, and the adrenaline is rushing, and they will get into different issues. But those things happen, but it shouldn't get to this level where people are getting hurt and there's no accountability, because that is what would lead to something. These things going further. If these things happen and people are held accountable, it prevents the situation from happening again, or at least it will tell people, hey, know that there will be consequences for what you're doing. If you go out there, you want to go in the street to support your candidate, and you got a machete, or you got a gun or something hidden that you're going to use to hurt someone if they have a different opinion, or if they argue with you, yeah, and you get held accountable, the next person who thinks about doing it will think twice. But now we don't really have those accountabilities. People are not. We don't see the number of arrests. We don't know what's going on from the police perspective as to where those investigations are and who's responsible. And not just people on the lower level, but legally on a higher level too. Are these political parties holding their own people accountable? And when we talked about this last time, why are they holding their own people accountable to make sure that they don't get in trouble? Can a political party in Liberia lose its rights to operate, and a few candidates in election if they continue to show violence in their protests, or violence towards other parties? Can they lose their license as a party? So those are all things that we need to look into from the legislature's perspective, to make sure that when they are interacting with these political parties and they are holding the National Election Commission accountable, and the police, the security forces, the parties themselves, are being held accountable.
I would want to come in from another point.
No, thank you. Cyrus, you're on the ground. Abu, before you come in, Abu, hold on one second. Before you come in, I wanted Cyrus to give us, some information in terms of what the tension level is on the ground. Is it too high? Is it getting to a point, a boiling point, that people are getting really scared?
Well, I would say, I mean, I haven't been here very long, but it does seem look as though there's tension around. I know there are cases reported of exchange between two of the parties sometime last week or so. But people are going about the business. What it looks like, more or less, is that there's not an intense political atmosphere in terms of canvassing, party mobilizing. Some people who are much closer to that I went to, they are claiming that people don't have money and all that. Things are eerily calm compared to what you expect an election period to be, if that's the question you asked me to answer.
Okay. All right. Uh, Abu, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. As Cyrus had just said, we need more tolerance in terms of how the campaign messages are being disseminated to our various partisans. We saw a cascade, something like a cascade made and a name of a partisan put on it. Those are things that sometimes we believe that these political party leaders are mature people. They should be able to warn or to be to caution their partisans just by telephone calls. No, you cannot do it that way, you know. But because if you continue to do these things, there will be the tolerance will turn into intolerance, where you have to be telling people, "Oh, you were selling Coca-Cola. I mean, you were selling sugar water, you know," and they would tell us, "Oh, that's politics," you know. We take advantage of the vulnerable, illiterate people or uninformed people. We tell them things and we make statements. And some of these statements are coming from the mouths of the people that they trust very much. Either the head of the political party is the one who is making these statements, you know. And when you say it, you expect everybody behind you to believe that is it. In the end, they are not in the communities. These are things that bring about a lot of confusion, and people will not know what is happening. They need to do it. Now, let's look at the police. Many times they have accused the police for being regime collaborators, but the police are there to keep the peace. The police are also voters. The police also have their voting rights. But where responsibility comes in is when they are able to look at the wrong thing and come in immediately to see how they can halt it. But if a policeman stands and sees two political groups fighting, that he knows that he has the ability to stop it or to call for reinforcement so that it can stop, he stays there until people get hurt. Then they say, "Oh, it was that's a political violence. That's electoral violence." And electoral violence have led to wars. So electoral violence may not only be out of the election results, even during campaigning period, electoral violence can make election would not go on at all. So now another thing that Cyrus talked earlier is about where we want to get together to protect our votes. So it's like people are actually just looking at one political party. They don't want a particular political party to win. And based on that, they are not even looking at their own interests. We go to second round. As long as it is this person, I will go the other way. So people are really not going to be voting on issues. But all in all, it is based on the lack of education and sufficient briefing of the various political actors. We have to start calling our politicians to intervene immediately with all of these wranglings, because the tolerance that educated people have, the people who are not educated may not have such tolerance. And when they get into it, Samuel Doe and Charles Taylor were turning their rounds. But in the end, Samuel Doe was almost one of the last men that died. Thousands of people died before they got to him. We have to understand this. We have to be able to tell the people, Liberia comes first. Liberia comes before our interest. Liberia should be our interest. But I still believe that we can get somewhere. Electoral violence is imminent. I say again, electoral violence is imminent. The crowd that is moving in the different directions are the same crowd. They are the same people. When one political party visits district number 10, the same people that come out to see that political party's candidate is the same group of people that are going to come to see the other political party candidate when they come to the same district 10. So we cannot calculate this based on the crowd. People are working in the background to make sure that this election is won on their sweat and on their blood. We have to be very cautious. We cannot rule out electoral violence, either before the real balloting day or right after balloting. I'm not seeing the ruling party ready to give up. Because at this time, everybody is claiming one round straight. Nobody is talking about a second round. So, as a matter of fact, even the Elections Commission, the other day at the legislature, they really do not seem to be ready for a second round financially. And even resource mobilization, they are not ready for a second round. Even though the Constitution says, or the election law says, that if there is no one getting the 50% plus one, there must be a second round. They don't seem to be ready for that second round. So they got people, everybody running around, one round straight. And this is a recipe for people suspecting that they will be cheated. And if anybody feels cheated, electoral violence cannot be ruled out. Yes.
How do we, yeah, no, I'm here. Mike, were you trying to come in?
Yeah, I was on mute, but I was trying to say that in as much as we have our thoughts on the deficiencies of the election commission on the part of the police, I think we should also take into consideration or recommend some suggestions that we think will help the country move forward in the situation, right? So the election commissions is responsible for implementing national elections. Police is responsible for security. But our police is mostly focused on security. I don't think they have all the resources and all the information. I'm not even sure if you go to the police, Liberian National Police right now, they can pull out data on past election violences, right? Violence that's happening. So I think maybe it will be great if the election commission can appoint one of their commissioners, maybe appoint a new commissioner, one of the sub-commissioners, not the chairperson, but whose focus is on security, whose job and his or her department will be focused on, evaluating past, election security issues, documenting that, coming out with ways to coordinate with the national police and other security forces, to ensure security for upcoming elections. Draft a budget, and his or her department can. The budget for what they feel is adequate for election security can be added to the national budget, for upcoming elections. And every year, and their department is just focused on security. Just how we have other departments within the election commission focused on technology and other things, policy and stuff like that. So I think this might be a way to begin the process of having someone who's analyzing what's going on within the election commission from an election perspective, what they've seen happen. Taking that information, coming up with solutions and ways to work with the police or helping the police be better prepared to deal with upcoming elections and political parties doing rallies, and stuff like that. So I think that would be a great way to help in the future. I know it's late to do that, but that would be a great way to start working on some of these things.
Yeah. One of the things that create a condition for violence after election is just the general sense of resentment about the current state of things, that people put themselves in a position that in no circumstance would they accept. So even if the results come out contrary to their expectation, they are not just willing to accept it. And to mitigate that, again, come to what we all have been saying. We need to educate people about what this process is, and how it is carried out, and what is expected of everybody at point in time when decisions are made. And also to tempt the rhetoric coming from the leaders of the different political and social groups, because in most cases, most of our conflicts were not people driven. They were driven by the messaging of a few who people just followed. So if people are more educated and can make conscientious decisions about the issues, then the likelihood that then just following somebody is significantly reduced. So it brings us back to the issue of voters and political civic education. One of the things I'll be doing in a couple of days, I thought it would be to reach out to the stakeholders, elections officials, political leaders, and raise some of these points and get their point of view and get some of the indication of the actual items that they are working on for us to ensure first that people make value judgment with the election, and also that people understand that the election can go either way, and be ready to accept the verdict of the majority of the people.
I think these are really very critical points, and that's one of the obviously that's one of the things we wanted to accomplish by having this conversation, is to put the message out there, but also to talk about things that can be done to mitigate the rising tension and the situation. The rhetoric that's out there, the way people, the things people are saying, and the way they are saying them, the perception around elections as if your political opponent is your enemy and you will not accept the outcome at all costs because you don't like that person and you don't like that party. I think that messages need to be put out there sufficiently to mitigate those kinds of things. And Michael and Abu and then Cyrus and so you all talk about these, the role of political leaders in talking to their in tamping down the tension, right? Talking to their partisans, but also educating them. The role of the election commission, the role of the government, information ministry. What I saw posters from the 1970s around elections, photos or posters from the 1970s around elections that were put out by the information ministry, not by the educating people on how to vote, because the law says it's actually the responsibility of the government to do civic education. So I've really seen photos of those, and I'll look for them, maybe show the people in on this. But is that happening? Is everything falling on the elections commission? Does the election commission have the capacity and the will to do that to a sufficient level? But of course, based upon what we're seeing on the ground, no, that's not happening. That's a significant problem that has surfaced. And then another important point is accountability, which I think is really critical. Has anybody been held accountable with all of the violence that's taking place? We just saw photos of people really hurt and stuff like that. Has anybody been arrested? Has anybody been prosecuted and sent to jail or anything? My information, as far as I know, is no. So when that doesn't happen, it affects people's confidence in the judicial system, not just judicial, in the criminal justice system, the police and the justice ministry, in terms of their willingness to hold people accountable and to prosecute people. It also makes people feel that they are partisan. And then that can, of course, lead to all of the other things that we talk about, which is people not having confidence and faith in the process, people thinking that the process is fixed against them, which, of course, can be a source of violence. Electoral violence can also chill participation. So if people are fighting in the streets every day, there's all this noise and cussing and stuff. Some people just say it's too much for me, it's too dangerous for me. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote. not going to venture out there. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get killed. I don't want people to come to my house at night, or I don't want to be caught up in a melee out there. Um, and as you said, Michael, which I think is really important, is the police even mapping up violence hotspots in the country, just looking at previous data, but also looking at what's going on now and trying to plan against those things. For instance, if people are clashing around, rallies and things, are you making sure that your rallies are held maybe days apart or maybe distances apart and those kinds of things? Are you sending police people to kind of man rallies to make sure that people are not trying to infiltrate to attack people and all of those things? This and having a dedicated person or a dedicated group of people who sit down and look at this data and look at these things, but also have conversations with stakeholders, with political party leaders, bringing them to the table, bringing election commission to the table, and having these conversations around the issue of violence. That's not happening, but that is something that could happen to really tone down the prospects of violence and to eliminate, what's happening, what's happening in the country. I think those are really critical points. Again, this is wonderful conversation, but I just hope that the people who actually are implementers of these things are even listening and trying to take these into consideration, or whether they even have interest in taking these really great ideas and suggestions into consideration. We might have
something
lost. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think I want to find it hard to believe that the Liberian people, the people in the positions, I want it hard to believe they do not they intentionally want to do the right thing. I don't think that's who they are. I think they are. I think they are not well. I don't have the. I'm looking at that. I was some the American put out some uh, health budget issues from the local hospitals and regional hospitals, not getting access to funding that was allocated for them. And I think if this is happening at the healthcare level, I think this is also happening in every other organization, institution within government in Liberia. That money that's allocated for budgetary issues, administrative issues, are not made available. So if the police if the police officers on the streets are not getting paid regularly, there definitely is not enough money to have a solid, data analysis team within the police department to analyze, crime data, build out, uh, crime maps for the different regions to see where in Monrovia in each county there's higher, occurrences of crime. They wouldn't have the money to hire, a data analyst or a data team to do that. They wouldn't have the money to sit down and analyze, hey, do we have enough police officers to cover, a riot if it happens and that riot has 20,000 people, just for there's a whole community just break out into a riot. Does the police have enough numbers? Let alone our elections. We have 5,890 polling stations. Do we have 5,890 police officers, let alone, and one police officer cannot man a police station. Yeah. So yeah. So I don't even believe we have that many police officers in Liberia. So let alone so these are all things to take a look at and say, hey, how are we preparing for these things? And officers, are they limited? Because if I'm given a job to do and I consistently don't have the budget to to get that job done and the equipment, training, I'm just going to come here every day, collect my paycheck when I can, have something to do, be busy, so I'm not bored at home, and go home when my day is done. So in as much as the leadership within these departments, these units, these different organizations within government, we can blame, but we also might not be able to blame them because they just don't have the resources, and there's no plan and effort towards making sure those resources make it in the future. It's okay. Right now we may not have it, but how can we make it happen so that next year you have the resources, and after that it is consistently coming, and you can do what you're supposed to do. I don't think that is happening in Liberia across the board, at all levels. I think the only money that's probably available across the board consistently travel budgets, plane tickets are purchased, per diems are given, and gas slips are given, vehicles are purchased, for the people, for the government officials who qualify for vehicle, those monies are made available. Other than that, the money made available for administrative duties, equipment, supplies, training, those monies do make it down to those people.
Just to close up, I want to agree with Michael that whatever resources or finances they have available should be made available to the Electoral Commission so that they can use it to be able to be proactive on certain things. Because if you do not have money on time, you are not going. You'll be planning and planning and planning, and at the time you get the money, sometimes the money is short. Then you have to change your whole plan last minute of time. The other day, I think government just told us that they had trained how many 3,000 more police officers. Are they going to be hanging around Monrovia where these police officers choosing only in Monrovia when they should have really chose selected people from in the counties and bring them for training and send them right back so that they can get on payroll from there? Now, all the people you have trained, they're going to be around. We got 36 days. So when are you going to deploy these policemen so that they can get familiar with the environment where they are going? This, we always like to do the last minute of time thing. We come to the voter registers. Most of the people you see moving with the crowds today, screaming the munya munya and other things in different political parties, are the people who have already been selected as poll workers. We already know where they belong. Last minute of time, because if you have programs to keep retraining them or on other things, they did the registration almost about 3 months ago. They have forgotten some of the things. You're not going to have the time anymore to train them before you deploy them. You're only going to call them now for deployment. So this also is another way that we are not working very well. So if these guys are not going, only they are busy getting themselves attached to political parties, some of them are going to be bought over, that they go to the polling center to man the polls only with the mind that they have gone there to find a way to cheat, which will not be very good. So because of the lack of money or money not being made available, I think, just as Michael said, we can just really do very little. The Elections Commission must also make sure for their own credibility of this process, I think they should be able to start doing a lot of things ahead of time. Because absolutely, I participated in 1997 election. I was a supervisor and at the same time a trainer. We trained people in Monrovia to be deployed in Sino, Maryland, and all these things. We will deploy the people even after the ballot boxes were already there. But the ballots were already in the counties before we started deploying the people, But what happened was that at that time, the consciousness of the people was kind of different as compared to today. At that time, people would have just said, oh, well, no need to vote. Let's just give it to Charles Taylor because he has the heaviest gun. Oh, if Charles Taylor does not win, he's going to bring another war. So the people had a kind of idea. I went to Maryland County. We said that there wouldn't have been anything like Charles Taylor did win the election, yes. But was the election fair? Yes, the election would have been fair. But it was not free because Charles Taylor had on the gates up until 2 months to polling. So when I went to Maryland to even train voter registrars, there was no political party that the people in Maryland knew about. In Grand Crew, they knew about no other political party except NPP. Up until the day of polling, when we were dropping off the voter registrars or the poll workers, there was nobody there from LPP, from these different political parties, nothing there. So the first time the people saw some of the names of the candidates was only when the ballots got to them the morning of the voting. So they need to be proactive to ensure that even the sample ballots come out ahead of time for the various elections, for both presidential and legislative elections. Those ballots should come out. Let it be the responsibility mainly of the political parties to teach their people how to vote. And again, I come in, we need to monitor the election commission's indelible ink that they are bringing. Because I'm really touched by the election commissioners' talk that they expect or they anticipate a very high number of invalid votes. They are not telling us where it is going to come from. Maybe because it is their fault. They already know that the ink they bring in may not be good. But they're not going to attack themselves. They start to share the blame ahead of time. They are not educating the people on it. The ballot papers are not out. The sample ballots are not out so that we can tell the people. Everybody just going, I'm number 7. I'm number 18. I'm number 12. I'm number 15. Some of these numbers, the people get tired of counting before they just stop halfway, then they mark the ballot.
And the people the good number of our elders in the villages can't even recognize those numbers you're calling. So yes. I don't even understand how they're going to vote for your candidate if you're telling your candidate, telling them to go vote for number 18 or number 10 or number 2.
They are used to seeing the candidate, but they saw the candidate only one time in the face. What happens when his picture is put on the card? They say this person looks like Joe Baca. No, it's not Joe Baca, that's Opon. Then they start getting confused. All of a sudden, they put a third person who is just midway between both of them. He looks like one, and he looks the other way like the other one.
You know what's going to be interesting is between just for fun, right? Gonglo and Boyka, who are both wearing country attires.
Yeah.
I'm see how that plays out. Who's going to be voting for who?
Yeah, exactly.
So voter education is very important.
And as you
not
guys
only
are having
the
this
election commission,
I
but
want
also
to go
the political
back.
parties. Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. And as you guys are having this conversation, I want to go back. I want to go back to 97 again, to something that I think the MPP did very well. They even were telling their people, the people who couldn't read and write in the villages and the rural places, to take 7 rocks. So in their voter education, they would tell the old people, you know what, this is, you could vote for Taylor when you go, this is how you vote. Take care, there's 7 rock with you and something, because Taylor was placed number 7.
7 from above and 7 from below.
You come from up 7, you come from down 7.
That's
you come from up 7. You come from down 7. Jack care, there's 7 rock into it. Now, that illustrates the point that you guys are making. Now the political parties know that they are number 2 or number 4 for number 2 for Braga, number 4 for Cummings, number 18 for Weah, etc., etc. I don't know. I don't remember Gonglo's number. Are they doing something similar? Are they saying just go and take these 2 things, or we gave you 2 something for you to hold in your hand for election day? I mean, they also have a responsibility to educate their voters, because they have a stake in this game. So yes, the election commission is failing. I'm shocked and surprised that they don't have a sample ballot out. The 97 election, when we brought about a sample ballot, at this time we already put people across the country using the ballot. I myself went to Basel and Riverside and other people in the interior with that sample ballot, showing people pictures. And I encounter MPP people who were actually using the 7 rock idea to educate their people. So that's the one thing that I think that the political parties have a responsibility, and I think that one thing they're failing. Very key points that I want to elevate again is the next saying that it doesn't even have money yet for a second round. That's very concerning. How would they even plan for it? Second, what happens Really, what happens if, say, on election day, a group of children just get out, a group of men, whoever, boys and girls get up and storm a particular polling place because they feel that there's some irregularities going on there? Who have sufficient police to stop them? Will we have sufficient police to stop them, or to and to seize the ballot box or whatever the case may be? I mean, that is something that I don't think is being planned for. I wouldn't see anything along those lines. That's something that's scary, and that's something that can be a source of violence, a source of fighting. Or you disenfranchise us, you took the ballot, my candidate were winning, not winning. People can start fighting and setting fires and hitting people, and somebody could die. A group of people could die, and something could start. A real large scale stuff could start. We saw the stampede in Nuclear Town during a crusade. The police couldn't stop them. People, more than 20, 30 people died. So, I mean, this is really, really, really concerning, and I don't see a lot being done to prevent or to stop or to deal with, prospects of violence around the election period. And it's starting again. Toting casket, fighting each other, blooding people, cutting people ears. Somebody was actually killed. It's dangerous, and it's unfortunate that not much is being done about it. And I hope that they will address it again. Look around us. There's Guinea, there's Gabon, there's an attempted coup supposed attempted coup in Sierra Leone right after the election. And now they detain a lot of military people and former police director, the Liberia repatriated to Sierra Leone, etc., etc. Just irregularities in elections, or just the perception that there are irregularities in the election, are causing incidents of violence around us, and this should be concerning to the authorities. So much so that they should start planning and doing something about it. Yeah, I think, and
Yeah.
the fact that there's no accountability, people are not being held accountable is serious. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think these are conversations that we need to continue after the election is done, and with the emphasis being on proper leadership. Because all of these things are happening because of bad leadership overall, and this bad leadership comes from the top. And whoever the president is, you will take responsibility. It doesn't matter if it's George Weah now. It was Ellen before. She should take responsibility for not helping Liberia get on track and building proper institutions after she became president. And then when she handed it over to George Weah, he takes responsibility for not recognizing the fact that we have bad leadership across our institutions and trying to work towards making those work better. And whoever president comes in after George Weah, whether George Weah means another 6 years, another president comes in after, that president would take responsibility for not Liberia in recognizing, oh, George Weah didn't do a good job of institutions. I do that, So now George Weah doesn't blame him. I remember when the it was the Joshua inauguration week. They were church ceremony the day before the inauguration. The pastor who he was the Josh Weah at church, and he said something to Josh Weah and team at that day at the pavilion, that you cannot blame Ellen for anything. You knew what you were getting into when you decided to want to be president of Liberia. Now that you've won the election, you are responsible for everything. You get blamed for everything. Whether you did it or not, you are the leader. You take responsibility, So now Joshua has to take responsibility for lack of proper leadership in Liberia. That leadership includes the fact that the people he has in power are not recognizing what the different organizations they're responsible for are supposed to do, so that they improve. They did not even the transition process was so quick from Ellen's government to his government. They kicked everyone out, so they didn't have the time to properly take account for what Ellen administration had done, and take that information and then say, okay, this is what Ellen administration done for 12 years of leadership. How can we do better? You know, the minute they were appointed or into office, they keep all the 6 months of transition that was done within a week. All LM people were out, they didn't care. You know, all the matter at the time was, now we are responsible, now we can do what we want. What are you going to do? You don't even know what they were doing, you know? And so bad leadership across the board. And we will continue to have this conversation for the next 2,000 years if we don't take a step back and address those fundamental issues of leadership. Leadership, building institutions, making sure that we have processes and we are working together and we're making things happen. And not necessarily come in and say, oh, I'm this, I'm going to do whatever I want here, you know, and then, you know, get your stuff and go on. The next person come, they have to reinvent the wheel. And they're not even taking the chance to, you know, and we know these things can work, right? Because we have the one shining light of efficiency in Liberia and turning things around is Mirabra. Everywhere Mirabra has gone, and there are reports of, you know, things working efficiently to turn things around. So it can happen. It can happen in Liberia if leadership wants, you know. But our people don't have leaders, so our people will not do what they're supposed to do because there's no leader to tell them or show them what the right thing to do. If you're a parent in the house, you don't discipline your kids, you don't structure them and say, hey, this is bedtime, this is time to wash the dishes, this is time to do this. Those kids will run helter-skelter in the house and nothing will get done. And that's what's happening in Liberia.
Absolutely true. So Mr. Abu, you want to come in and kind of wrap up? It's 4:50, it's 10 minutes to 5. So yep.
What?
Don't want to take your entire evenings away from you, Michael. Thank you. You're all the way out of the country and you were able to join.
Yeah.
What I really want to say about the elections is that this is a defining factor for leadership in the country. Everyone comes in and say that Liberia has had a vacuum in creating good leaders for the past maybe century. We have others who say, well, things have been going bad, so therefore they should continue to be bad. Because when we say, oh, the rate of drugs infusion into the country has increased, then you are answered. This is not the first time drug is in Liberia. Drug has always been in Liberia. Everything has always happened in Liberia. But we keep looking for the leadership that will make sure that these things do not happen. Now, if your leadership comes in, we expect this leadership to be able to halt it. But if you can't halt it and you tell us it's pre-existing, if you came there for 12 years, you did not do it. How do you want me to do it who only came for 5 years? You know, these should not be our national debate. Our national debate should be finding leaders and holding themselves accountable for what they are not able to do. If possible, maybe look at the limitations. We know that some jobs have been created for a lot of people. Yes, you move 10 million people out of poverty. Doing what? Whole day, they're selling, don't start 5 minutes, don't start 5 seconds, last start 10 seconds, these are all they're doing. And they ride motorbikes, they're not paying taxes to government. You see. How can you take people out of poverty and they have nothing to give back in terms of cash? Every little money that we make, we are asking for it outside there. How can you make people to be or to trust your government when they find out that some people come into government, they could hardly afford a room's rent? After 6 months, you see them build a mansion. Are the other people who are looking at them stupid? No. They know what is going on. We are in this country defining capitalism in a very different way. Capitalism is about hustling. As long as you can hustle, whether legit hustling or the crocodile hustling, as they may say, is a hustle. So we keep going this way on a daily basis. How are we going to change this trajectory? When are we going to wait to have a good leader? John Brown steals $10,000. Police not able to get him to arrest him. Another person goes to work and steal $500. When police finally catch him, the population comes in. Oh, why are you arresting the man who only stole $500? John Brown who stole $10,000, you didn't arrest him. We have to let the law be the law, as how Musa Belete says. Let the law be the law. So we cannot continue to say we are going to have a fair election when people feel that they are entitled to leadership. When people feel that their time of leadership is not over, they should still be given more time to continue to let the people suffer in Liberia. How can we have a good election when people are not having much trust in the Elections Commission? When the government is not paying its quota to the Elections Commission, and Election Commission takes advantage of it and really not working overnight, not working overtime to make things happen. Every election is kind of unique. The processes may be the same, but every election has its own unique nature. This is coming at the time, election in 2017, the incumbent was not running. Election in 2023, the incumbent is running and wants to, at all costs, maintain the seat. Election in 2017 did not have that number of presidential candidates. Election in 2023, presidential candidates have gone to 20, and the next thing they all have done is, instead of knowing that there is no need to enter this electoral process, they say, well, we can enter the process, but we have to collaborate. Then another group comes. There is no way one political party can win election in Liberia without collaborating with other parties. So the perception of the voters, the perception of those in power makes the electoral process kind of very difficult to predict at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I think this is really, really great. And I hope, let's continue this conversation. As you all said, you hit very key points. Michael, I just wanted to say that I did go on the Election Commission website and I struggled finding stuff. So the point you made about how clumsy their website is, all the information from the 2005 election, everything on one website, that's crazy. I couldn't even find that. So, and then, of course, you go to some of the links and they're not even working.
They don't open at all.
I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. I just want to make that point. But the leadership question is extremely critical in Liberia. I think one of the major thing Liberia lacks is leadership. Leaders, Liberians, I always say, are a very respectful people. I don't want to use the term followers, but we tend to do things that once a system is put into place, we'll follow that system. We just go by whatever is existing, whatever is in place in the country. If and when you have people, there was a time I remember when people used to get in line to get in taxi or to even on transportation to go, to go to places. You go to a place, you buy a ticket, the first group of people get in the car, another car comes and people get in there. So things were organized that way until we came to the point where everybody was fighting to get in the taxi because that structure has disappeared. That became our culture. That is to say that if there's a system in place that says go this way, if you don't do it, you'll be held accountable, hold people accountable, people will fall in place. Systems people will fall in place. And that comes with what? Leadership. That comes with programming. That comes with accountability. And that is critical, and that's one of the things Liberia is really, really lacking. Maybe in our next conversation we should include a segment on leadership and different leadership styles and what Liberia really needs, type of leaders in sectors in which we need leadership. We talk about resources. How you running election? You're not even providing resources to election commission on a timely basis. If the commissioners have to run to you to say, "Oh, we need $500 to do this," before they get it, their independence is undermined. Their independence is undermined right there. Their money should be in a bank. They should control it. They shouldn't print ballot on it when finance minister is willing and happy to give them money to print election ballots. That's critical. That takes away that takes away from their independence if they have to come to you to beg you every day to get some of the activities going and they can't get it right. We talk about the police and all of that. So I want to thank you all very much.
I
If
have
you
a funny
want to
point.
chime in quickly, yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's interesting to me that we spend thousands of dollars to buy cars for our representatives and senators, right? So, how did they run their campaigns? Didn't they have cars? They were running around in to run their campaigns. So why is government spending millions of dollars to get all these people new cars? You know,
Yeah,
all these,
yeah,
yeah, those things are. It's crazy to me when the very districts they come from, that 35,000 or 50,000 for that new car can support a whole hospital over there
absolutely.
or clinic in that
Yep,
district. So I
yep.
don't know. I just thought about it. I'm like, this makes no sense in
No,
Liberia what we do.
no. No, you're right. You're right. So they're buying those brand new vehicles for themselves. They're giving themselves gasoline money to do all of that, but their districts don't have clinics, as you said, don't have qualified teachers, don't have safe drinking water, no electricity, but they live in gated mansions
Yeah.
and drive $60,000 vehicles. That is again where's the leader. Thank you guys. I think this was a very healthy conversation. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Um, let's continue the conversation next week. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Trying to. This freaking.